Hey folks, Will Hamilton here, and these are my picks for the men's half of the draw at the 2010 Australian Open. What I'm going to do in this video as I make my predictions is I'm going to go through the draw at AustralianOpen.com. And what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at the top half, top quarter of the draw. And this is where you got Roger Federer. And I expect Roger's going to come through the top quarter of the draw. There's not really anybody in this section that really scares me when I make this prediction. Now, many of you who have looked at the draw, you might be looking at it right now or saying, wait a second, Will, you've got Nikolai Davydenko in this section of the draw, and he's beaten Federer twice, and he's beaten him recently as a week or two ago. Well, my view here is that beating Federer or beating Nadal in a non-major tournament isn't the same thing. And for comparison's sake, last year you had Andy Murray beaten Nadal, beaten Federer several times, and there's a lot of hype surrounding Murray. People were saying this is where he's going to break through, he's going to win the Australian Open, and then of course he went out in the fourth round to Fernando Verdasco. So I really don't put too much stock in what happens in non-major tournaments. It's certainly an indicator, but when you have somebody like Federer who just totally owns Davydenko in the majors, has never lost to him in a major, and has dominated him, for lack of a better term, I don't see it. So maybe I'm wrong. I doubt that I'm going to be, but we'll see. But I think Federer is going to come through that section. I do expect Federer to play Davydenko in the quarters because Davydenko has been playing very well. He's a very tough player, but I just don't see him dethroning the GOAT in this tournament, not yet at least. Now, in the second half of the top half of the draw, second quarter, you've got Novak Djokovic. He's seeded third, and I think he comes through this quarter of the draw. At the bottom half of this quarter, you have Robin Soderling, and I expect Soderling to make it to the quarters and play Djokovic, although there's some other interesting players in Soderling's area of the draw. You have Tommy Haas, who is always dangerous and can make is always capable of making a good run. He did at Wimbledon. Got a very pretty game. I love watching him play, so I wouldn't be surprised if Haas did well. You've also got Tsonga, who, the thing about Tsonga, he's got a huge game, but you never really know if he shows up to play. Sometimes his mental game is not always there. So, I'm cautious with my pick of Soderling, but I think Soderling is going to make it to the quarters, where he will get taken out by Djokovic. So you're going to have a Federer-Djokovic semifinal. Now, moving to the bottom half of the draw, we have the top quarter of the bottom half. And you've got Andy Roddick here, he's seeded 7, and you've got Juan Martín del Potro seeded 4. Del Potro, obviously, the U.S. Open champion. Now, picking who came out of this quarter was probably the toughest decision I was wrestling with because, part of me wanted to really go with Del Potro, but I got to give it to Roddick. I think Roddick is going to come through. He just won Brisbane, and he has historically done well at the Australian Open. He always makes deep runs, and he always, to be honest, loses to Federer. So I think you're going to get Roddick coming through. I'm not super confident about that. Del Potro is the man, so little hesitation there, but my gut tells me that Roddick is going to be playing big, and that serve is going to propel him past Del Potro. Now, in the bottom quarter, the very bottom, you've got of the bottom half of the draw, you have Andy Murray, you've got Rafael Nadal, and this might seem like maybe a tough decision if you have a Rafael Nadal and Andy Murray quarterfinal match. I think Nadal gets through that relatively easily. As good as Murray is, I just don't really trust him in the majors, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, where he lost to Verdasco when he was supposed to make this really deep run. He lost in the fourth round. I think it was Gonzalez that took him out at the French Open. He kind of surprisingly lost to Roddick. not that surprising in hindsight since Roddick was playing great and at Wimbledon, of course. And then you have the U.S. Open where he went out kind of weakly to Cilic. So, Murray certainly is going to make a breakthrough, I would presume, at some point. But until that happens, I'm not really going to put too much money on him. I think Nadal has been there, and he's the guy I think is going to come through. So we've got a semi between Roger and Novak, and we've got a semi between Rafa and Roddic. And I think you're going to get Federer through versus Djokovic, and you're going to get Rafa over Roddic. And I was struggling between Rafa or Roddic, but I think Rafa has been playing well recently. He has lost a couple close matches, but he's the defending champion. He's really mentally tough, and I think that gives him the slight edge over Roddic. And the other thing is you're going to have that lefty spin, that lefty forehand pulling Roddic far out to his backhand side. Roddic's backhand is obviously his weakest shot, so I think that the mental toughness in that exchange is going to be the difference. And before I get to who wins between Federer and Nadal, I know a lot of you are sitting there probably thinking, wow, you've got Federer and Nadal going out on a limb there. And I absolutely agree with you, and I was sitting around thinking, I'd really like to pick someone else. But the bottom line is that since 2006, the majors between 2006 and 2009, you have had two guys not named Rafa or Federer win a major, and that was Djokovic, and that was 2008 Australian Open, and that was obviously Del Potro at the U.S. Open last year. So just purely on numbers, statistically speaking, you're probably not going to be right if you pick somebody other than Rafa and Roger. And until that paradigm changes, I'm going to kind of go with the safe, uninspired predictions, I guess. But the numbers would seem to back that conservative approach up. So I think in the final, I think you slight edge, I think, to Roger. I think Roger's going to win. Ever since last year's Australian Open, he's really been playing well. Kind of took his foot off the gas a little bit at in the final of the U.S. Open, but Del Potro played an amazing match and deserved to win. So I think you get Federer coming through in a tight match versus I think 5 sets sounds about right. So that is those are my predictions. You get Federer making it all the way through and taking down the Australian Open title. Now, in a different video, I was asking y'all to make predictions on who you think the final matchup was going to be and what you think the score was going to be. And the winner was going to get a year to FYB Premium, a $250 value. And we're also now going to throw in a $25 gift card from TennisExpress.com. They've been nice enough, Tennis Express has been nice enough to actually let us give away gift cards pretty much every single day of the tournament. So it's not just the final prediction, which we'll put a little hyperlink or a little annotation where you can click through and watch that video and enter the terms of the contest. But for pretty much every match or every upcoming match, I'm going to pose the same question. What is the score going to be? So you might have, say, Federer versus, I think it's Andreev in the first round. So I would say, what's the score going to be of that match? And whoever gets the closest wins a $25 gift card from TennisExpress.com. And again, that'll be every single day that we release a video with these previews. I'll have the whiteboard. I'll be scribbling away. So that'll be cool. And, it's not just whether or not you pick the score. If you say something insightful, if you give some good commentary on the match, or what you say turns out to be true. For example, you say, this is the exchange you're going to see, this shot sequence, and you turn out to be right, I'll throw in another gift card as well so we can get some good dialogue going. So I'm really looking forward to interacting and reading those comments during the course of the tournament, and I'm looking forward to just the tournament in general. I think there's going to be some neat matchups. I think there's a lot of storylines this year in this tournament because some other players have been having success that we sort of haven't had as much in the past year or so. So there should be some cool subplots going on. Looking forward to it, and again, looking forward to reading your comments over the course of the tournament. So we'll talk soon.